Hina Khar, wonderful to see you back at the Munich Security Conference.
Wonderful to be back.
So, Russia, Ukraine is getting so much attention right now, but not so far away from that is Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot has transpired
Mm,
since the last time we've all
mm,
met together.
mm,
Talk to me, now
mm,
that it's all fallen apart,
mm,
what's the state of play from
mm,
your perspective
mhm.
with the Taliban government today?
Okay, so the state of play right now, from my perspective, or should be from your perspective also, from everyone's perspective,
Mm,
is that things are not falling apart, but they have already fallen apart in many
mm,
ways, right? And now we are we are ensuring, I think the international community is setting the stage for an absolute failure. So you want 100 on 100 guaranteed failure of the Afghan state in how we are reacted. We've reacted to this very hasty, hurried, catastrophic departure of international forces from Afghanistan. I'm just coming in out of a session on Afghanistan, and
mm.
it's very interesting to see that we have selective amnesia. Actually, we have long-term amnesia.
In
And
terms of what? Tell me, what was it that you were most struck by?
okay, Ian, look, Pakistan has had a different perspective. My perspective may not be completely aligned with the state of Pakistan's perspective, right? But I can give you a perspective. Now, the in the history withdrawal, I think one thing that has made it clear to me, very very clear, is that the U.S. and allied forces, or the international community, came to Afghanistan because there was a domestic demand for a reaction to 9/11.
Of course, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
and they left
Internationally,
internationally
across the
across
entire
the okay,
coalition, yes.
and not because the Afghans invited them or the Afghans needed them or they came to help out the Afghans,
Mhm.
etc. Right, and they left when the demand for the Afghan adventure just completely ceased to exist. So they were responding to demand before, and they were responding to demand later, domestic demand.
Mhm.
Now what happens is that you might be responding to the domestic demand for action and then no action, but in the process the cost of war study tells us that we lost 926,000 people altogether in the post 9/11 wars that the US conducted.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yeah.
363,000, or somewhere close to that, were civilians. Now I ask you, because we propagate, because many of the problems that we're seeing and we experience every year at Munich and conferences such as that, about the grand question of international values, etc. I think we have to ask ourselves the question: are we really propagating international value system across the board for all nationalities? If it was, the 363,000 American, British, European lives, would it still be, fair game?
No,
It won't be,
no.
right? And that is why interventions themselves, I feel, have broken or cast a deep shadow on the entire democratic sort of value system. So I'll give you an example. Of course, people are talking about the starving Afghan people who need our help, but
Yes.
that's like, the white man's burden, okay? Not accepting what you did wrong
Mhm.
in creating the situation that is starving the Afghans right now,
Yep.
and not accepting that you are continuing to do something wrong to setting the stage for more Afghans to die, right? Now, for instance, if an American important person were to say that Taliban must never be legitimized, I ask the question: who legitimized the Taliban in the 2020 document, in which
Mhm.
they were called the people? There was this long nomenclature used to define the Taliban, and which country decided to engage with the Taliban direct before the intra-Afghan dialogue, which was being
You're talking about
propagated
the
into
Trump administration.
I'm talking about the US administration. You
Yes, that's
see,
right.
so when you talk about Pakistan,
Yes.
you talk about Pakistan.
Yeah.
You don't talk about Imran Khan or Nawaz Sharif
No,
or,
that's fair. Yeah, yeah,
okay?
yeah, absolutely.
So the choices you make,
Yeah.
fortunately or unfortunately, have consequences that you don't have to live through, but I have to live through because
Mhm.
I belong to that region. Yeah. And the whole interventions of the last 2 decades, I think, have had such unintended consequences that we are going to live through the consequences of those for decades to come. The value system that you espouse domestically, you do not espouse internationally when you do these interventions. I am no spokesperson for the Taliban. I do not espouse to any of the value system that they bring. I think that the biggest threat, their coming to power in Afghanistan, is the biggest threat to my country in the messages that it sends to the extremists and, at the security level.
So if the Taliban are there, we need to, figure out how to work with them. Do you, because there is this sense
Mm,
in the
mm,
United States
mm,
that there's no Taliban 2.0,
mhm,
that in reality, this
mhm,
is a group that is beyond the pale, that you
mhm,
can't work with them, you
mhm.
can't engage with them. Is your view that that's not the case, and why?
No,
If so?
absolutely not. I am no spokesperson for them. I am not very. I don't espouse to any of the values that they bring in. I don't espouse to their, governmental system or the values for women, and the fact that it's not inclusive, the fact that schools for girls are still not open. None of that. However, do I have the luxury to have an ask? I mean, they are there right now. So for you to say, oh, we don't want to engage with them, is basically use if you're becoming an enabler of 35 million Afghans starving, I will judge you on that. And I have a right to judge you on that, right? Because those Afghans starving will have an impact, at least on my country and certainly on the Afghans. And forget my country's impact or your country's impact. What about the fact that these are lives, and weren't we propagators of human rights and value of human life? So where does it all go? Do we have the luxury to have grand positions that we can hold especially when in the last 20 years or 30 years, we have done a pretty shoddy job?
So I take it that at a minimum, listening as opposed to just hearing would mean that all of the reserves that are now the Taliban's reserves as the government, even though no one voted for them, you would suggest should be unfrozen. They should be made available to the Afghan people.
Of course, they should be made available to the Afghan people, but to the Afghan people, as I'm saying. So I'm not talking about recognizing the Taliban, or all I'm saying is that you tried to create Alice in Wonderland in Afghanistan for 3 decades. You failed miserably.
So let's talk a little bit about your country and where you see Pakistan's role in international affairs right now. How is it changing?
Okay, so Ian, I'm a very different person than typically you would find an ex-foreign minister or a current foreign minister. I do not look for a Pakistan or a Pakistani role in international affairs. Okay, I pretty much want Pakistan to take time out and concentrate on its own within domestically.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a foreign affairs minister usually. That's not what you get.
Because I think Pakistan has suffered from wanting a role. Pakistan has suffered for the last 4 decades for having a role, perhaps pushed on it because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And from then onwards, Pakistan has never really had breathing space. Okay, and economically, we have weakened ourselves in that process. We have been aid dependent in that process. By the way, I believe the aid architecture. So whenever we talk about humanitarian crisis and developmental spending, the aid architecture, both on the humanitarian side and on the development side, is pretty much broken. As a recipient country, I managed that portfolio for Pakistan for 7 years. I can tell you it is broken. Okay, whether it's USAID, the European Union, any and each one of them. So there are many international goods that we need to fix within the international architecture. But from Pakistan's perspective, I would not want Pakistan to have any role. I would want Pakistan to concentrate inward. I would want Pakistan to secure its borders, not allow threat to emanate from a very, very revisionist India, if you allow me to say this, from a Afghanistan. Which
I'll push you on that later, but that's
absolutely.
okay.
You're more than welcome to do that. I take the bait on that one.
Okay.
And Afghanistan, the instability from Afghanistan, we have owned too much instability. So we've been larger than life, and we said, oh, all the refugees, 3 million come over, we'll take care of you, etc. Our first responsibility to take care of our own.
India is now a part of the Quad. It's engaged more with the United States, but India's more traditional role in foreign policy has been non-aligned. We want to work with everyone. We don't want to do geopolitics. Are you suggesting that actually what Pakistan needs is the traditional Indian foreign policy?
I am, they only benefited from it, and we didn't really benefit from being overly aligned with one country or the other. I don't believe. What is
you can say it. You can say Pakistan needs India's traditional foreign policy.
No, I don't think so.
You're not going to go there? You don't want that quote?
No, because India was not really non-aligned. It said it was non-aligned, but it was aligned in many ways, right? But what I'm saying is that, look, India had its successes. I think India is now going to a trajectory where it will not be able to come back to seeing a positive trajectory anymore. I think the whole concept, extremism being propagated at the state level, The Economist did a very good article where it said that it is ticking all the boxes on democratic system, but the democratic pillars in India are being eroded.
I mean, given the enormous importance of China's economy in the region, Belt and Road, the investments. I mean, how does one say, actually, Beijing, Pakistan was invited to the Biden Democracy Summit and said no. And there was much said and much written about the fact that, well, the Chinese told you not to attack.
Not really. I don't think the Chinese did. I think some of the wrong choices we make are on our own. Give us that much credit.
Yeah.
Okay, so I say this because I think Pakistan has suffered from over-attention rather than lack thereof. Okay, and the whole concept of a sovereign state is a state which can make its own decisions on what works for it in which situation, right? So when we clearly see a trend, perhaps more propagated by the Americans than the Chinese, where the world is being wanted to be divided into two different spheres. And pretty much everybody's saying, which camp do you belong to? I say no camp. I say we belong to the Pakistani camp. And I say we are very set on remaining, and we should remain within the Pakistani camp. And it is exceptionally important that Pakistan is able to build on its strengths. A country which is dependent on IMF largesse cannot really want to have an overprojected role in the world, right? Our first role should be to our own people. Our first responsibility should be to our own people. I think we've ignored that too much. And I think that's what fractured democracies are looking like. And therefore, democracies are supposed to be a means to an end, right? I think we've gotten so warped up and involved in the means that we have stopped looking at what the end of what the democracies were
Human
supposed to give to the
development,
people.
civil
Exactly.
society, social
Exactly.
contract. That
And may I
works. Yeah.
add over here that I feel that the West is feeling so threatened right now, not because of many other things, but because it feels that now there's an alternate model, perhaps, which is giving the end through means which are not democratic, perhaps, entirely democratic, as in Western democracies. And that is perhaps leading to the fear, and that is leading to all of this restlessness and the helplessness.
Yeah, which are the two themes that we've had 2 years ago and this year in the Munich Security Conference. I agree that those, the global elites that go to these conferences feel that way. I think the average American is not yet in any way thinking about the fact that there's an alternative model out there that's threatening to them. They're thinking that the alternative model is Democrats versus Republicans.
Sure.
There's a different problem.
Yeah.
But I remember 2 years ago, and you said you'll take the bait. I believe you. When you mentioned to me about the democratic erosion in India, because you referred to India under Modi as a rogue state.
India is now becoming the bully for the entire region and is actually going against every international commitment and, frankly speaking, regional commitments and bilateral commitments it made to Pakistan by what it did in Kashmir. Now, when you do all of that, what do you become? You become a rogue state.
Which is a strong statement. Do you still feel that way? He's very popular today in India. He's about to win a whole bunch of state elections. Do you still feel that way?
Ian, everyone who's doing the wrong thing is popular in their own countries, right? So this, this whole theme of helplessness, and we talked about it in the main session, that helplessness felt by people, by the electorate, okay, creates this demand for someone coming in with an alternate system. So India, a secular, developing country with strong democratic credentials, and here comes this person who gives an alternate route to India, okay, which is non-secular for sure. India is, since we talked, by the way, there has been the Citizen Amendment Act, okay. I think after that was the Kashmir, or just around the same time. So
the taking away of the autonomy.
Taking away of the autonomy. Taking away of the autonomy. And the Citizenship Act is not a small thing, right? Basically, you're saying everybody's Hindu has a right to be an Indian citizen. Anyone who's Muslim has the least right, and anyone in the middle will think about it, right? And after that, there have been attacks on universities, there have been attacks on people covering their head. So that is not a liberal India, okay, where you're propagating a certain person or certain set of people who are Indians and the rest are not. If you don't follow the right religion, if you don't follow the right ethnicity, if you, you may not be as Indian as the others, that is very, very dangerous, because India is a large country. India has a regional, presence, okay? And I will connect this to the Quad, because India is in Quad. Why? Or, suddenly why has the Quad come up? Because everything that is happening in the world, or at least our part of the world, has to do with containment of China.
It's a reaction to China. It's a reaction to China.
I'm going to stick to that position, because pretty much everything that is happening around our region, where the West is involved, where the US particularly is involved, all of it is coming in from a fear of China, from a containment of China policy. And India today can get away with murder, and the West would look away, because they look at India as the only alternative to containing China within the region, embroiling China in some ways. I think it's very, very dangerous. The trends in the world right now are supremely dangerous.
Pakistan is a country that's in desperate need of investment and development. It's got to come from somewhere.
So it's coming from whoever is willing to give it to us.
That sounds
right?
mostly like China.
That is China, and that is also other countries, whoever is willing to. So you see, the thing with China also is now we have a lot of Western countries telling us, "Oh, you're taking too much, not assistance, it's borrowed
investments,
money, it's investments from China." And as someone who managed Pakistan's investment portfolio and aid portfolio for like almost 7 years, from 2002 till about 2010, so quite a long time, we pretty much begged every country for the same level of investments in hard loan, in soft loan. We begged the World Bank for those type of infrastructure investments. It was not forthcoming. So then China comes up with this initiative, and it's exactly what we've been asking for. Of course, we're going to take it. That's what I call sovereign decisions. And so when I say we're not aligned,
But there
to
are
anyone,
consequences of taking
there might
that money.
be consequences, but you see, the consequences are for you to figure out and for me not to care about, because I will do what is right for my country. I should do what is right for my country. I should to make choices which are aligned with my country's interests. Right now, my country's foremost only interest should be the betterment of its people. We have ignored that for far too long. Okay, we've been too embroiled in the Afghan problem and this problem and that problem and how bad India is and how good someone else is to really concentrate on our people. And our people have suffered. We are 220 million people. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of youth. We need to. So I think mostly, pretty much every country will do much better if they were to focus inward. We have lots of issues, I think, each one of us within our own countries, sort them out, and then we can play battle.
Hina Khar.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.